Welcome to the third Re-CHARGING Reform Judaism Conference. Welcome to New York City, and welcome to the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue. It's our honor to host you. Thank you for taking the time to spend these 2 days together, especially those of you from out of town. You may have followed the news that much has changed in New York City since we last met 2 years ago. Not all of it for the better. Nonetheless, there's still some interesting and fun things to do here in the city, and it's a joy to see each other again and to spend this time together. Special thanks to my friend and partner, Mark Anshan, who for decades has participated in and led many North American and international bodies of the Reform movement. He's a talented and committed lay leader, devoted to the success and well-being of our movement, and is an intensely hard worker, more than justifying the enormous salary we pay him. I also want to express our collective gratitude to our philanthropic partners, individuals and foundations, many of whom are with us here today, who support us, push us, press us, and encourage us to succeed. They're my kind of Jews. Whether they consider themselves Reform or not, they all recognize the immense challenges we face, and they all understand that we are at an inflection point in Jewish history. They model for us what Jewish commitment to Jewish peoplehood means. The recognition that in urgent times, we must set aside whatever controversies we can for another day and join forces to confront the much greater challenges that we all face. We've come a long way in 3 years. From the initial effort to convene several dozen Reform activists who were increasingly worried about the direction of the Reform movement, we have since built a nationwide network of many hundreds of Reform rabbis, cantors, educators, other Jewish professionals, and lay leaders. Our accomplishments in the past 3 years are themselves testament to what we have always emphasized. Open your eyes. There is a growing crisis within the Reform movement, and we must respond with vision and vigor. Many more of us have now taken up that mantle. The most important and long-lasting achievement of any leadership generation in any vocation is to raise disciples, to inspire the next generation. At this Re-CHARGING conference, you will meet many of our future professional and lay leaders. And what an amazing group of people. We are in very good hands if we can figure out how to produce more of them and empower more of them. The Reform Rabbinic Fellowship is currently in its third cohort. By now, 59 early career Reform rabbis have spent an intensive year with us. Some of them are here with us today. Make sure to speak with and get to know these terrific rabbis. We have had outstanding success in reinvigorating birthright Israel in the Reform movement, leading hundreds of Reform Jews to Israel in the past few years, even during days of war. Rafi, the Reform Movement Alumni for Israel, our effort to engage young adults, has expanded into 11 cities, enveloping over 650 young Reform alumni. We are collaborating with the Tell Institute on developing a new curriculum for Jewish youth and adults. And we will hear from Dr. Dara Horn and Stephen Wise member Jessica Levin about new approaches to Jewish education in this era of pervasive hostility towards Jews in the Jewish state. Our ideas and opinions expressed through podcasts, conventional and social media have gained widespread traction. We meet all the time with visiting Israeli delegations of mayors and other politicians, journalists, influencers, IDF commanders, and educators. And as you saw a few minutes ago, Israeli leadership at the highest levels of government wants to help us. President Herzog telephoned me several weeks ago just to say that the State of Israel follows the work of Re-CHARGING Reform Judaism and Amplify Israel, and he asked how he personally can help. We have had numerous productive meetings with the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, which is eager to support us. I want to take a moment to recognize the brilliant architect of all these efforts, Rabbi Tracy Kaplowitz. Where is she? Stand in the back. Listen, my life changed, and so did yours when Tracy walked into our movement. From the outset, we emphasized we are of the Reform movement, by the Reform movement, and for the Reform movement. Most of us grew up in the movement, and we feel deep affection and loyalty to the institutions that educated and trained us, providing us with the opportunity to devote ourselves fully to this marvelous vocation that has given so much meaning to our lives. It is love for Reform Judaism that generates our pain, concern, and disappointment over what seems to many of us a loss of will to define and defend the values we uphold at a time that urgently calls for moral clarity and institutional vigor. Among the most important initiatives of this conference is the introduction of 4 resolutions. We will debate them today and vote tomorrow. These resolutions put our convictions on the record and state our expectations that the national institutions of our movement recognize, reflect, represent, and implement the principles stated therein, all well-established ideological pillars anchoring Reform Judaism for decades. I want to thank the dozens of leaders who worked on the 4 resolutions addressing the centrality of Jewish peoplehood, the reinvigoration of spirituality, prayer, and Jewish practice, innovative models of communal leadership, and the cultivation of Jewish literacy and learning. For the remainder of my time, I will devote myself principally to the resolution to strengthen Jewish peoplehood in the North American Reform movement. The 21st century will be increasingly defined by ideological commitment and communal loyalty to the centrality of Jewish peoplehood. In the words of the proposed resolution, Judaism finds its fullest and most authentic expression through a vibrant and lived commitment to Jewish peoplehood. While different approaches to halakha will continue to constitute a natural ideological divide between the Orthodox world and the rest of us, the vast majority of North American Jewry, in reality, even these distinctions are diminishing and will continue to do so due to the growing threats and challenges we face. For example, I can tell you that in the lead up to the New York City mayoral elections, those of us from Orthodox to Reform who defended Israel in the face of an onslaught of obnoxious opprobrium found much more common ground, worked much more closely with each other, and had much greater affinity one with the other than with those in our own movements who promoted the anti-Zionist mayor of New York City. And what we often forget, but ignore at our peril, is that while our movement is a religious body devoted to God and Torah, much of the Jewish world expresses their Jewish identity in secular form. Through a fierce commitment to the Jewish people and the state of Israel, the Jewish people's most eloquent expression of peoplehood in our times. Many of these Jews are members of our synagogues. The religious teachings of Judaism do not exhaust the full content of Jewish civilization, It is the Jewish people that keeps Jewish civilization alive. If there are no Jews, there is no Torah. The Jews do not derive their authority from rabbis. It is the opposite. Rabbis derive our authority from the Jews. We are under such immense ideological, political, and communal pressure from both outside and within the Jewish community that, in the words of the proposed resolution, there is an urgency for clarity, courage, and moral leadership regarding Reform Judaism's enduring commitment to Zionism and Jewish peoplehood. We cannot give in to those who would take us back to the days when our movement stripped all vestiges of Jewish peoplehood from Reform Judaism. We cannot succumb to those who preach a false philosophy of Jewish universalism that camouflages disdain for Jewish particularism under the guise of a sometimes sweeping, self-righteous, sanctimonious, and suffocating misunderstanding of Tikkun Olam. Judaism is a blend of universalism and particularism. Es halagoy gadol, I will make of you a great nation, v'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama, and all of the families of the earth shall bless themselves through you. Judaism's distinctive genius is in the balance, a kind of particular universalism, unique in religious thought. It is both the clarion call of Amos, let justice roll down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream, and the clarion call of Amos, I will restore my people Israel. They shall rebuild ruined cities and inhabit them. I shall plant them on their own soil, never more to be uprooted from the land I have given them. Have you been following developments, just recent developments at the Brooklyn Park Slope Cooperative? For those of you from out of town, this is a years-long effort on the part of liberal New Yorkers to help the needy and food insecure. It's been heavily supported and led by Jews, including our own Reform rabbinic colleagues. Yesterday, by a vote of 2-1, the cooperative voted to boycott Israeli food products. What should be our response? Looking back at the past years, can we say that we did everything we could in our interactions with our progressive partners to thwart the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement? And isn't defending Israel, Zionism, and Judaism itself also Tikkun Olam? Now, it is true that we are seeing worrying signs of a narrowing particularism in some quarters of the Jewish world and the Jewish state. Those elements of the Israeli government that represent a closed-minded, chauvinistic particularism are an embarrassment to Israel and world Jewry. And the hooligans who violently assault Palestinians on the West Bank are a disgrace. It's Israel's responsibility to thwart them on pain of imprisonment, and it is our responsibility to say so. At the same time, while we may convince ourselves that the main problem in the Jewish world is a narrowing particularism, the opposite may constitute an even greater challenge in the diaspora, an expanding universalism, threatening to eclipse Judaism's fundamental command of Ahavat Yisrael, love for the Jewish people. A universalism unmoored from particularism is not Jewish universalism. It is just universalism of the non-Jewish kind. As Rabbi Hillel Silver asserted in a classic address to the CCAR, In the case of Christianity, it was Paul's insistence upon a religious creed entirely divorced from nation, people, land, or language that finally placed the movement, Paul's movement, outside the sphere of Jewish life. The anti-peoplehood philosophy of 20th century Reform Judaism threatened to do the same, Silver emphasized. We should heed this warning well. Given the growing hostility to Israel, especially in our circles, liberal and progressive spaces, it's not enough for us to proclaim our Zionist bona fides every now and again, often expressed defensively and with so many qualifications, stipulations, and modifications that our enthusiasm for Zionism is buried under an avalanche of provisos. It's not enough to issue occasional press releases or tweets that we are a Zionist movement. We're the leaders. We must lead. We must be proactive. It's harder now. These are times that try our souls and test our convictions. Israel has been at war for 2.5 years. It is a war of self-defense imposed upon Israel against its will. But no armed conflict, even the most justified, can be waged with complete precision. There has been widespread death, dislocation, and suffering throughout the Middle East. This, too, is a legitimate part of the story of the past 2.5 years. Every loss of innocent life is a moral tragedy. Still, the reaction to October 7th and every day since revealed the rot inside our most cherished Western institutions, moldering and spreading for years, infecting previously healthy organs of the body politic. It's more than the disappointment that we may feel at the hypocrisy or moral failure of this or that university president or head of school or student union or media personality or religious or social justice leader or squad of politicians. It is the entire philosophy of Western liberalism that is under assault. Increasingly, we're living a surreal reality. More Jews are massacred in one day than any other day since the Holocaust, and immediately protests erupt against Jews. Israel is accused of genocide, an ancient blood libel dressed up for modern consumption, and the genocidal forces that launched this war are forgiven or forgotten. What these assassins did to our brothers and sisters, children, uncles and aunts, cousins, grandparents, and friends in Israel is what they would do to all of us if they only had the chance. The reason that 1,200 innocent Israelis were slaughtered on that day and not 12,000 or 120,000 was not because of intent, but capacity. The intent was to murder every Jew they could get their hands on. This was a bloodletting of savage and primordial rage, as bad and as wicked as the worst of the pogroms inflicted on our people. And had we found ourselves in those southern settlements on that Simchat Torah day, our liberalism would not have saved us. Lifelong peace activists were murdered and taken hostage. No one asked them what were their views. And therefore, we, especially we, liberals, must respond with clarity, courage, and moral leadership. If not us, then who? It's harder now. These are times that try our souls and test our convictions. Israel has been ruled for the past 25 years by right-wing governments supported by ultra-Orthodox parties. For young American Jews, these are the only governments they know. And here in America, the Democratic Party that 2/3 to 3/4 of American Jews have supported since the days of FDR is turning against us. According to a recent NBC poll, 2/3 of Democratic voters sympathize more with Palestinians than with Israel. And according to a recent Harvard-Harris poll, nearly half of young Americans between the ages of 18 to 24 favor Hamas over Israel. Hamas! But precisely because it is harder now, we, especially we, liberals, must respond with clarity, courage, and moral leadership. If not us, then who? We cannot ourselves give credence to gaslighting efforts on the part of people who are not even Jewish, sometimes supported, wittingly or not, by fellow Jews who seek to sever Zionism from Judaism. Precisely because it's harder now to contend with these anti-Israel forces, and because much of the deterioration is happening in our circles, liberals and progressive spaces, we have an obligation to summon all of our reservoirs of clarity, courage, and moral leadership. In the words of the proposed resolution, we call upon the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism and all arms of Reform institutional life to ensure that their public advocacy, partnerships, and policy positions reflect and advance the movement's enduring commitment to Zionism and Jewish peoplehood. And be it further resolved that we affirm that our movement ensures the pursuit of justice also includes the defense of our people, and that these commitments walk hand in hand. It's not enough to say to each other, look, see, we're a Zionist seminary. Our students spend their first year in Israel. But our commitment to liberal education requires us to ordain anti-Zionists. And we'll just let the market of North American Reform synagogues sort it all out. Under what theory of liberal education are we required to accept outcomes we did not intend and do not want? It's not enough to say to each other, look, see, we're a Zionist seminary. But liberal education requires us to accept binationalism as a legitimate expression of Zionist thought. Even the binationalists would be offended by that. It's not enough to say to each other, we're a Zionist seminary. But there is a distinction in our minds between self-determination and sovereignty, as if, given the condition of the Jews, there can be self-determination in the absence of sovereignty. Under what theory of liberal education is there a requirement on our part to even accept, let alone ordain, candidates for the rabbinate and the cantorate who do not believe what our movement believes? Ours is a seminary, a sacred institution. We're not giving out university graduate degrees. It's not that they do not have the right to such beliefs, or that a community of Jews that seeks to hire such communal leaders does not have that right. This is America. Do what you want. God bless you. But why our movement? It's not what we believe. Over the course of the past 3 years, I have received queries regarding the authority of the Re-CHARGING Conference. On whose authority? I'm asked. Do we even convene, let alone give speeches, write papers, and now pass resolutions? So to clarify, this gathering has no constitutional authority over any of the institutions of Reform Judaism. But we are flesh of its flesh and bone of its bone. And therefore, I would reverse the question and ask, on whose authority does our seminary change decades of Reformed theology as expressed in numerous platforms and resolutions that do have constitutional authority, accepting, let alone ordaining anti-Zionists? And therefore, I hope that tomorrow we pass the resolution. Be it resolved. Call upon the HUC-JIR to cultivate and expect a deep, informed, and lived engagement with and commitment to Jewish peoplehood, Zionism, and the State of Israel among all those pursuing ordination and professional leadership within the Reform movement. And be it further resolved that we expect that all candidates for HUC-JIR's educational programs, rabbinical, cantorial education, and nonprofit management will be committed to a Zionism that echoes the commitments of Reform Zionism. These are decades-long commitments on our part. Do we still agree with them or not? If we do, then in these perilous times, we should express our beliefs with clarity, courage, and moral leadership regarding Reform Judaism's enduring commitment to Zionism and Jewish peoplehood, and enforce our beliefs across the board. If we do not agree, explain why you disagree, why you think that we should now change decades-long, hard-won commitments and values, and let us debate and re-examine our principles. But remember, we have already engaged in a fierce 50-year debate about Zionism and peoplehood in the 20th century that almost ruptured the movement and led to a competing seminary across the way, the building next door, called the JIR, the Jewish Institute of Religion, over the question of Zionism. History has already established that an anti-Zionist philosophy is not only catastrophic for the Jewish people, an abysmal misreading of history, but will be emphatically rejected by the vast majority of our people, including Reform Jews. We must be careful not to overly intellectualize our approach. We must feel the heart, the pulse, the spirit of our people. And besides, Intellectuals are often wrong. In 2021, the American Jewish Archives published a fascinating article about the two great historians of the 20th century, Jacob Rader Marcus and Selo Baron. Marcus was described as the dean of American Jewish historians. He authored more than 300 books and articles. And Selo Baron was described as the greatest Jewish historian of the 20th century. Both knew everything. Both were wrong, alas, about Germany. Both advised German Jews to stay and wait out the Nazis. They both thought as intellectuals. Baron wrote, "There is no reason to despair of the survival of German Jewry." And Marcus wrote that the Jewish genius for survival will manifest itself in Germany. Liberalism is still alive in the lands of fascist and National Socialist control. A new age will dawn for Central Europe where the Jew will be accepted as an equal, as a simple human being among his fellow men. Asked in 1981 to comment on his earlier views, Marcus responded, "All that was proved wrong was one paragraph. 3 lines. All the rest was correct." Okay, maybe. But even so, those 3 lines were pretty important, wouldn't you say? This I believe. The third Jewish state will be the last. Israel's destruction would lead to our disappearance as well. The Jewish people cannot survive a Middle East Holocaust less than a century after the European Holocaust. Even now, more than 80 years later, we have still not recovered our pre-war numbers. There are fewer Jews living in the world today than on September 1st, 1939. Anti-Zionism is a monstrous ideology that contravenes every liberal principle we hold dear. Of course, we have an obligation to discuss what we mean by Zionism. We have an interest to establish the biggest possible tent. I'm a liberal pluralist, and I believe in big tents. But even liberal pluralists have boundaries. If you believe everything, you believe nothing. If the North American Reform movement, in word or in deed, by action or silence, becomes in fact, or even in perception, an anti-Zionist, anti-particularist movement that cares only or mostly about universal concerns, unanchored in and unmoored from the centrality of Jewish peoplehood, most American Jews will abandon us as they would have in the 20th century had history not forced us to come to our senses. A diaspora community that disengages from Israel, where half of the remnants of our people lives, has no future. Such a community will eventually wither away and at best constitute a footnote in the annals of Jewish civilization. Any seminary, whether in word or in deed, in principle or impression, acquires the reputation of being hostile to Zionism. A seminary that ordains anti-Zionist clergy has no future in America. If we marginalize ourselves from the mainstream of our people, the Jewish people, and the Jewish state will continue without us. And it is we who will be remembered only in books and learned articles, a testament to a good idea gone awry, a haunting song to what might have been. At the beginning of the book of Exodus, before Moses was called to leadership, the Torah describes this prince of Egypt's first encounter with the Hebrew slaves. Vayigdal Moshe, and Moses grew up. Vayetze elechav, and he went out unto his brethren. Vaya'ar besivlotam, and he saw their suffering. The preeminent commentator Rashi effectively asked, if he went out to his brethren, do we need to be told that he saw their suffering? Since he had eyes, obviously he saw their suffering. Rashi responded, he directed his eyes and his heart towards them so that he would suffer along with them. We, the leaders of the North American Reform movement, have an obligation to teach our congregants and our students with clarity, courage, and moral leadership. Direct your eyes and your heart towards your people. Feel their spirit. Feel their pulse, their soul. If they rejoice, rejoice with them. And if they are suffering, suffer with them. Mourn with them. Support them. Help them. Free them. Redeem them.